And we hope everybody is having a great week. You're probably tired of staring at your screen and watching things. So if you're joining us today, we appreciate you very much. We are very much tired of all of our Zoom meetings because all of our life has moved onto the computer, even though we love practicing that way. When all of our life is here, it just feels like work. So today, we want to talk a little bit about virtual law firms specifically. And we all can kind of talk ourselves out of things that are, big changes or even new approaches, reasons why that won't work for us, why that won't work for our clients. But the concept of a virtual law firm really isn't any different in that aspect. People still, even if they understand it or think it's a good idea, there's still pushback on, changing maybe the way that it's always been done in your practice or taking a different approach than what everyone else is doing to law. So for us, the feedback from clients about this particular delivery model for legal services has been overwhelmingly positive. And so, so why is there pushback from attorneys on adopting this law firm model? And Laura and I are going to talk today about 3 of the top myths that attorneys that we speak to tend to believe about virtual law firms. And so the first one is that clients want to come to your office and meet you in person. No. So clients need to get to know their lawyer and trust their lawyer. We agree with that. There's still a relationship. Relationships are really important, and that doesn't change whether you're, serving them remotely or whether you're sitting down in front of them. But that doesn't have to be in your fancy office. They want to pay for your legal help. They don't want to pay for your beautiful view, even though it might be nice to visit you and you have a beautiful view. They do not want to pay. Laura, I always tell the story because it's so funny, and I didn't know it was a thing because I never practiced in big law, but Laura, in a past life, had a lot of interactions with big law, and she was telling me that they have people that come in and water their plants, which I would actually need if I was trying to foster plants because I kill plants. But these plant waterers come in regularly, and you may not think about that, and that's great. That's nice to see some fresh plants when you walk into the office. But at the same time, you are paying for legal services. You are not necessarily paying for their plants. But in reality, what happens is that goes into overhead expenses. And so anything that is going into their overhead expenses eventually passes itself down, makes its way to you. So they want to pay you for their, legal needs. Also, one of the things I say, because I feel like it comes up every single time we talk to anybody, even some of the most forward-thinking, tech-friendly attorneys, is, well, you can't build those relationships online. People want to shake your hand and see you face to face. And, my response to that every single time is people find people to marry online. People date online. That is a billion probably dollar business. People meet, match, date, and get married online. They can hire their attorney online. It is, not a more personal relationship, more intimate relationship than your spouse. So that is always my response. And then you always see people, oh yeah, you're right. So consumers really kind of expect some of that. Whenever they're looking for services, because clients value convenience. That is really important. Oftentimes as attorneys, we work the same hours. Sometimes we have flexibility or throw in a Saturday or have some night hours, but for the most part, we are working the same time that they're working, and they don't want to have to take off of work. They don't have to find childcare. They don't have to drive down to some place they've never been, navigate that, go in a very vulnerable position usually to go talk to somebody that they do not even know, or, you pass along till they get to that person while they're sitting in a waiting room, whatever. So, the first myth today is really that clients want to see you in person. They have to see you in person. They will not hire you unless you are in person or you have this big fancy office. So that is myth number 1.
Myth number 2 is that virtual lawyers have increased liability. This is not true. Virtual lawyers still have to abide by the same exact ethical rules, but we, as traditional attorneys who practice in a brick and mortar space, but we would actually argue that if done correctly, virtual lawyering can actually decrease your liability for any type of malpractice possibilities and things like that. Virtual law firms use a secure client portal for communications. Most lawyers are emailing with clients. Unless you are encrypting every single email, your communications with your clients are not secure. How many people are doing that? I'm gonna be really surprised if anybody at home is raising their hands, more than like 0.002% of the lawyers, because it just doesn't happen. So unless you're doing that, and then you're not more secure, you're less secure than using a client portal for your communications. Virtual law firms also use technology to collect and store information. That's a big deal because, again, keeping your client data secure is one of the biggest obligations that we have as attorneys, and having things on shared drives and things, things of that nature, it's just not necessarily the best tactic. I used to work for Westlaw, and I remember I was working for Westlaw in Chicago when a DL Piper or DLA Piper, I always forget how to say it because it's out of my realm of knowledge, the, many thousands of people law firm, but they got hacked into and had ransomware and all sorts of stuff like that going on. So, having everything kind of in one place is not necessarily the best idea if it's shared access and a lot of people can get into that kind of information. So virtual law firms use technology to collect and store information, but the biggest thing you need to think about, and that we think about here at MVL, is that when you're choosing technology solutions, they have to meet appropriate security standards. Make sure that you research and know the tech that you're using. Then your confidential information is likely to be more secure than if you had paper files laying around or just to have things saved on your computer or a network system. We always say that if your tech is HIPAA compliant, then you're probably going to be good when it comes to security. So that's myth number 2, is that virtual lawyers have increased liability. We argue that they actually, first of all, it's the same, but second of all, we argue that we might even have decreased liability because of the things that we have in place in order to have that communication and store our information. Myth number 3 is that remote work is virtual lawyering. Now, this is something that kind of, that Brooke and I get a little bit riled up about sometimes, especially me, because I've been a remote worker for most of my career. I've started doing things professionally, working professionally in 2002, and I've been a remote worker most of my professional career, but I've never been a virtual business until I joined Brooke Moore, because remote work is not virtual lawyering. That's a huge myth. Simply using technology in your firm or emailing or that kind of thing, it doesn't create a virtual law firm. Having remote employees or satellite offices doesn't mean that you're a virtual law firm. It's all about how you interact with your clients. That's the kind of threshold of whether or not you're a law firm that has remote workers or if you're a virtual law firm.
Absolutely. And just a couple of other things we wanted to mention that are kind of misconceptions about what a virtual law firm is. It's not a legal form company that just provides documents to legal consumers. I think that that's a pretty common misperception of that. Yeah, there are documents, there's automation, there are things that we do to become more efficient in our practice, but you still have the touch of an attorney. There's still an attorney involved, and we're still there with you. So another thing is, there are attorneys that don't have websites, but most attorneys nowadays, hopefully, fingers crossed, have a website, at least a landing page, something. If you don't, please go get one. But, having a website is really essential these days, but merely just having that web presence, even if it's a bit interactive, a contact form or something like that, that does not create a virtual law firm. That is a website. And awesome if you are interactive, but that does not create a virtual law firm. And also a virtual law firm, it's not a cloud or software service that assists with your law firm management. And so that's one thing we get sometimes is, is this some kind of a platform that we're selling? And for us, partly it might be because we kind of use a trade name, but sometimes they think, that it is more of a vendor if you've got attorneys do, if you have a virtual law practice. But a virtual law practice is a real, legitimate, actual law firm model for the delivery of legal services. So the three things today, the three myths that we hope that we have debunked for you today are that clients want to come to an office and see your face in person and meet you in person. And yeah, that's not true. And still probably won't be true after Corona. This is not just a random thing. It works. And I think a lot of us are finding that we can use technology a lot more in our practices. The second myth is that virtual lawyers have increased liability. We talked a lot about, we have the same ethical rules and also some of the technology best practices that we follow and we hope that you will follow. Another thing too that we didn't mention is, when you're using technology, a lot of times that technology makes things more efficient. And so when you're more efficient, a lot of times errors are reduced. So, if we're manually inputting names and numbers and things like that, there is a greater likelihood of human error in doing that than actually utilizing this technology to automate these things. And then the third myth is that remote work equals virtual lawyering or a virtual law firm, and that is not the same thing. So, we're here if you have any questions about virtual law firms. We know that the term kind of gets tossed around sometimes, and like Laura said, sometimes we get our feelings hurt a little bit if it's a definition that we do not agree with, but we are open to all interpretations. But we're happy to help you understand more of what a virtual law firm is. We have a virtual law firm course we are wrapping up this week. We are starting again on May the 11th. Is that right? Always transpose it. Anyways, I don't know how you transpose 11th, but I either say the 11th, 13th. Anyway, so on May 13th, so you can go on our website. Or 11th. Oh my gosh, I did it. Yes, I need to. So on May the 11th, our course is launching. It's a 5-week course, and we basically hope that you can take everything that we tell you and walk away ready to implement a virtual component or start a virtual practice on your own. And if you have any questions about that, let us know. We will be back here next week, and we'll be talking about something else that seems really timely to us, and hopefully it's timely to you. Hope you guys have a great week.